Well, 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 the Switch 2 has had quite the launch. One of the most successful launches of a console of all time, in fact. 3.5 million units in the first few days. That is ginormous, and more than the original Switch's first month, which had a relatively meager 2.74 million reported at the end of March 2017. Nintendo seems to have done a pretty decent job of ensuring enough units were distributed to retailers for supply to meet demand. And the horrors of the PS5 scarcity and scalping are nowhere to be seen here. Now, we've got quite a bit to process since launch. Third-party game sales, the launch titles, and how it's actually been 1 month in with the new console in our hands. So let's take a look one last time at the Switch 2's launch, its major talking points, and my experience with Nintendo's latest console. Hal from GamesRadar here, and welcome to Switch On, where we talk all things Nintendo Switch 2. By the time launch day rolled around and I finally got my own console in front of me, I'd already unboxed 2 others, so the experience was all too familiar. The setup process was also nice and easy. Transferring my old Switch data across was relatively painless. It did take 2 attempts, but I imagine that was due to Nintendo's servers being overloaded by everyone and their mum doing the same. By the time I'd finally sat down to get stuck into Mario Kart World, one thing had become evidently clear. This little beast is nippy. After 8 years with the original Switch, I'd grown all too accustomed to long load times, almost to the point where I didn't even notice them anymore. But with the 2, everything is pretty much instantaneous, even navigating around the still pretty bare-bones OS. I never had any grounds to complain about this in the original, aside from the eShop, but now it feels sluggish compared to its younger sibling, which pops in and out of menus lightning quick. The best example of this is the new capabilities added to both the Switch and the Switch 2 in the latest update. Button remapping. A feature that was originally limited to the Pro Controller, you can now remap every button, even on the Joy-Cons, and you can create presets for different games. I found myself popping in and out of these menus repeatedly as I was figuring out the best layout for each game. On the Switch 1, this felt cumbersome, but on the 2, it wasn't in the slightest. This speed, of course, extends to the games themselves, with the best examples being Pokémon Scarlet and Violet and Super Mario Odyssey, both of which had received free optimization updates. They now zip between areas with hilarious speed, and not to mention look gorgeous with their newly upgraded visuals. Having not replayed the latter since its launch way back in 2017, I'll definitely be giving Odyssey another go after smashing my way through Donkey Kong Bonanza. As for Switch 2 games, well, Mario Kart World doesn't load hilariously quickly like Death Stranding 2 on the PS5, but it doesn't leave you waiting long either, and considering just how much the game is loading at any one time, this is a hell of a feat. The Pro Controller was possibly where I was the most skeptical, as at a glance, it looks almost identical to the original. But after having spent quite a bit of time with it now, I am completely sold. In my mind, it's best compared to the upgrade from the Xbox 360 controller to the Xbox One. At a surface level, there isn't that much of a difference, but there are enough little improvements here and there that it really begins to come into its own. It's slightly nicer to hold, the face buttons feel nicer to operate, and the thumbsticks feel silky smooth as they glide across their axes. And then there are the grip buttons, which when combined with a meticulous button remapping, really creates a more customizable gaming experience. Granted, none of this is new by any standards. The Xbox Elite controller has had back paddles since 2015, and third-party controllers have had them even longer, and building in button customization into the OS was available on the PS5. But to see Nintendo implement these relatively modern conventions is really refreshing. Now, enough about hardware, let's talk games. When it came to game sales, one nebulous quote has been doing the rounds. A so far unnamed third-party publisher stated that their game sale figures were below our lowest estimates. Pretty damning words. Reportedly, not including the Mario Kart World bundle, during the launch week in the US, 62% of Switch 2 physical game sales were from first-party games, while 48% of launch week Switch 2 physical game sales in the UK were from first-party titles. For the UK though, if you include the bundle, that figure rockets to 86%. If it's safe to assume the same in the US then, unsurprisingly, Nintendo's games outsold non-Nintendo games on a Nintendo console launch. Shock. Now, the thing to bear in mind is that the major third-party launch releases are ports of pre-existing games. Cyberpunk 2077 and Hogwarts Legacy are the biggest talking points, and while there are things to consider here in terms of previous availability on other platforms, they both serve a purpose, be it an enhanced version or a first-time appearance on a Nintendo platform. As both are lengthy RPGs, the replayability on these games is polarizing. Broadly speaking, with these types of games, you have two types of players. Ones who play it once and put it down, moving on to the next thing, and fans who play games like these over and over again. With the former, there's a low chance of wanting to buy the games for new hardware, and for the latter, they'd probably already replayed the game multiple times on the platform they'd had it on originally. So unless the novelty of playing it on a new form factor appeals, there's not likely to be another sale here. There is an overlap. I, for one, will play a lengthy RPG, and then maybe 4 or 5 years later, if I particularly gel with it, will revisit a game maybe once more. So that novelty of playing handheld could be enough to lure some back in, like with the original Switch's port of The Witcher 3. The result is basically a very small demographic that these games appeal to. Those who haven't played the game before, and those who want to revisit it in a new way. In Hogwarts Legacy's case, there is another small demographic. Those who had the original release on the Switch 1 were disappointed by its performance, and now want to play the game at closer to full whack. But seeing as the upgrade is only $10, that's not going to add a big boost to revenue. So, were these games doomed for failure? Not necessarily, as it could be said that these titles served another purpose. A demonstration to other developers of what the Switch 2 is capable of. In Cyberpunk's case, we have one of the most demanding games to run in recent years, still used to this day to benchmark high-end gaming PCs when all the dials are turned up to 11. Yet here it is running pretty well on the Switch 2, reportedly in some ways even better than on the Steam Deck. And in Hogwarts Legacy's case, we have an underperforming port that really struggled to capture the magic on the Switch 1, getting a huge boost with the new console. It can definitely be said that the Switch 2 could have used more original third-party releases at launch, as aside from these ports and re-releases, there was basically only Survival Kids, an RPG aimed at younger players. Not exactly a system seller. But Cyberpunk 2077 and Hogwarts Legacy are a clear message to third-party developers that the Switch 2 has got what it takes to run their games. So when we start seeing major multi-platform releases adding the Switch 2 badge to the end of their trailers, I reckon that's when we'll see third-party sales skyrocket. Now, I fall into the camp of only having bought the first-party games. So, how were they? Here's where things were a bit of a surprise for me. I haven't played Mario Kart World nearly as much as I thought I would. For about a week and a half straight, I played World every day. The racing is sublime, the mechanics, items, and courses are just as good as I'd hoped, and the racing modes did not disappoint. I played Knockout Tour online with friends, and it was just as grueling as I imagined. The carnage was real, and the excitement was palpable. And the music. The music alone is nearly worth the price of admission. Mario Kart has a history of solid soundtracks, but this time around it goes unimaginably hard. Where I was actually kind of disappointed, and this probably won't come as a surprise for a lot of you, was the open world. The world itself is gorgeous. There's little details everywhere, and meandering from area to area, completing P-switches on the way, is pretty damn fun. The challenges themselves are great little bite-sized chunks of gameplay, ranging from lazy jaunts to so demandingly technical you need to lock in for 20 minutes to finally crack them. But none of it feels connected. In my hands-on preview, I express my excitement over the parallels between World and the Forza Horizon series. In those games, you drive from race to race. You find an event on your map, drive to it, complete it, then the game spits you back out and you either find the next one or go off on your merry way exploring. In World, none of this cohesion exists. The open world is completely separate from the rest of the game. All of the event modes are accessed by the main menu, and there's a real missed opportunity here. The hidden challenges and collectibles are excellent little diversions, but there's nothing for them to divert you from. In this concept fully realized, they should serve as secondary or even tertiary objectives to exploring a racing-based open world. I needed full-blown races in these kind of games to engage with and clear off my map, and then procrastinate from in order to fully appreciate the exploration. So, sadly, once I'd completed all the various cups and knockout tours, unlocked mirror mode, all the karts, all the characters and their costumes, I put Mario Kart World down. I guarantee there will be days where I'll randomly fancy a jaunt into this massive open world, but in the past, in games like it, that exploration has been to clear objectives off my map, which just isn't present in World. And no doubt, just like its predecessor, I'll also pick the title up countless times to play with friends, both online and on the couch. But aside from those random days I fancy going on a drive and seeing what challenges I can find, I don't think World will hold my attention much further. Now, let's talk Welcome Tour. Back in my launch title predictions episode, I had a lot of fun repeating the sentence demonstrative collection of minigames that utilize the console's various new functionalities. Every single console since the Wii has had a launch title that fits this description, and lo and behold, the Switch 2 is no exception. Price-wise, it falls somewhere in between the best and the worst of the DCOM, TUTC, VNF. It's not a pack-in like Wii Sports, but at £7.99 or $9.99, it's not a full-price release like Nintendo Land or 1-2 Switch. Welcome Tour does differ from its predecessors though, as previously these titles have been more akin to party games, multiplayer focused with their minigames pitting you against your friends or family. The Switch 2's equivalent of this seems to be the Switch 2 edition of Mario Party Jamboree's new exclusive content, Jamboree TV. Welcome Tour, however, is, well, exactly what it says it is. An interactive, in-depth tour showing off the new console and its launch peripheral hardware. And at this job, I've got to say, it does really well. The sheer amount of information you can learn through its minigames, tech demos, quizzes, and a rather charming stamp rally is surprisingly comprehensive. Some aspects are still kept characteristically vague, the RAM, GPU, and CPU to name a few. But in other areas, it goes hard with the details. How the HD Rumble 2 works and what it's capable of, how the mouse sensors work and how they've been designed and how sensitive they are, and the screen sections break down just how VRR and HDR work, how many capacitive touch sensors it hosts, and just how it's constructed and how Nintendo have built the console around it. It's all genuinely fascinating. The minigames aren't much to write home about. They do their job of exhibiting a particular functionality exceptionally, but I certainly won't be returning to them after the fact. The tech demos, on the other hand, I've revisited a couple to really appreciate what they're displaying, and to show off to others some of the wizardry Nintendo have managed. Should it have been a pack-in? Maybe, but at less than a tanner, and considering how much informational content it's crammed full of, I can't really be that mad at it. It's pretty obvious where its inspiration lies. It serves a very similar function to Astro's Playroom, minus the platforming, and plus more of an exhibitive focus. So, if like me, you really want to get to know the new console you just dropped a substantial amount of money on, inside and out, I'd actually recommend it. Surprisingly, Pokémon Scarlet is where I've spent most of my time so far with my Switch 2. The Switch 2 update has finally brought the latest Pokémon title somewhat up to date, and I've been having a blast playing through it again without the foibles of its original release state. Now, I'll be the first to admit I am one of those heathens that will enjoy any Pokémon game I can get my hands on, and I 100% understand the series' criticisms. I'm not going to convince any Pokémon naysayers here, nor do I intend to. In the grand scheme of the gaming landscape, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet aren't impressive games, and the Switch 2 update isn't impressive either, but they are fun. Would it be accurate to say the update makes the games more fun? Probably not. But does it make the problems that the original releases of these games had that got in the way of that fun less numerous and jarring? Absolutely. As for the Legend of Zelda titles, I've yet to properly dive into these games as much as Pokémon, but both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom look spectacular on the Switch 2, especially when pumped out of a dock onto even a moderately sized 4K TV, especially if it supports HDR. I'm looking forward to the day when I get the urge to pick these titles back up again, as I'll be in for a real treat. I'll be honest here. Even as an avid Nintendo supporter, someone who brought a Switch day one and eventually updated to an OLED, someone who's eagerly played almost every first-party Switch game, and someone who, even though they were almost guaranteed access to a console, still pre-ordered their own, I'm finding it difficult to wholeheartedly recommend the Switch 2 right now. It's a gorgeous piece of kit, with sometimes scarily impressive performance, and expands on its predecessor in almost every way, but at that price tag, it's an investment. Hardware-wise, you definitely get what you pay for. Nintendo has worked some real sorcery to get that much performance out of such a small tablet. But discounting the original Switch library, even the ones that have received an update, there's such a small catalogue of games to play right now. At this point, it feels more like buying in early for experiences yet to come. If you haven't picked one up already, and neither Mario Kart or Donkey Kong have piqued your interest, then it's a hard sell. But I can say that on the promises Nintendo have made, the console itself does indeed deliver. I've had a blast in the first month with my Switch 2, and I know I'll continue to do so in the months and years to come. But what about you? Have you picked up a Switch 2? And if so, how have the console's early days treated you? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for joining me for Switch On.